All right, you guys, so this is so funny. So this is a 383 here. It's one of mine. It's just something I built to sell. And I was watching Uncle Tony's Garage, and he was talking about the best Chrysler engine out there. And he said, every time I watch that guy, I almost always completely agree with what he says. If you want to know about Mopars, watch Uncle Tony's Garage. The guy's sharp. So he made a statement recently when he was talking. He has a video about his favorite Mopar engine, small block and big block. He likes the 340 small block, which I totally agree with. And the 383 was his choice for big block. But one of the things he said was, Mopar guys always have two or three or one or two 383s stashed away somewhere. Well, so you see all this that's going on here. Like a day or two after he said that, I was looking around over here for something, and I happened to notice, I'll shine a light on it, right down there. You can probably see it. I had totally forgotten about that engine. But that, boys and girls, is a 383 short block core. And I just laughed out loud when I saw that thing in there because like I said, I completely forgot about it. And I thought about what Uncle Tony said. He's like, yeah, Mopar guys usually got one or two of those stashed away somewhere that they forgot about. It is so true. So now that the weather's cool, I'll probably dig that thing out and build it just for the heck of it. So I just thought that was funny. Hey, welcome back everybody. Today I want to talk to the Ford guys out there about the 5-liter V8. Now, you know, you guys have seen the series on the 289, but I've had a lot of questions about what you should be looking for if you want to build a small block Ford for anything. Now, one of the things that I suggest, one of the things that we've done in the past with these numbers matching vehicles is, instead of going with the original engine, the customer pulls the original engine out, sets it aside, and keeps it all original so that it can go with the classic Mustang or Torino or whatever the car is. Find yourself one of these. What this is a later model Ford 5-liter V8 out of a Mustang or pickup truck or whatever. These engines are plentiful. I paid $125 for this, and it's a complete short block that rotates. And of course, it's just a core. It needs to be rebuilt. But I want to talk to you about some of the advantages of going with the later model roller block. Now, there are some differences, so I want to kind of point out those differences so that you'll know what to expect if you're gonna build one of these. The one big advantage to the later model block is that it is a factory roller cam block. Now, I know I've told you this before. Recently, I am getting to the point in my engine building business or career, whatever you want to call it, where I have just completely decided not to mess with flat tappet cams anymore. I'm done with them. There is no reason to put a flat tappet cam in anything. You know that on Charlie's 289 we got going here, it is a flat tappet cam from the engine. It's from a 68. It's a flat tappet cam from the factory. Well, we obviously are going with a roller. We're going to upgrade that to a roller. In fact, a lot of guys now anymore, if they want an engine done, I just tell them it's got to be a roller cam, man, or I don't want to do it. Either that or I'll do a short block for you. You put the cam in yourself. If it's a flat tappet cam, I'm not going to put it in. I'm not going to mess with it. There's a lot of disadvantages to a flat tappet cam. Let me list them off for you. Number one, they don't make as much power. You are limited on how much spring pressure you can put on that cam, and also the lobes, the way that the lobes are designed on a flat tappet, they are not nearly as efficient. In addition to that, they have about 2/3 more breakaway and rolling friction than a roller cam. So they rob horsepower. The parts are under a lot less stress and they don't last as long. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen a flat tappet cam with a lot of miles on it that wasn't worn out, didn't have significant wear. I've seen roller cams with 300,000 miles on them where the rest of the engine's worn out and the roller cam is pristine, has no wear whatsoever. So they have very little rolling resistance on the rollers, and if you keep them lubricated, they're fine. The other issue is the oil nowadays, and that is in the mid-90s, the EPA mandated that a very large percentage of the ZDDP content, which is zinc and phosphorus and copper and some other elements, be removed from the oil. The reason that they did that is because the EPA actually approached the manufacturers and said, hey, this is in the early to mid 90s, and they said, we have a new federal requirement. You have to warranty your catalytic converters on your cars for 100,000 miles. The manufacturers fired back and said, well, that's impossible, we can't do that. And the EPA says, well, why not? You can't make a part that's capable of lasting 100,000 miles. And the manufacturers are like, well, no, not with the current oil that we're using, because the oil had a zinc and a copper and a phosphorus additive. They call it the ZDDP content. It had that additive in it, and that additive, what it does is it's designed to make flat tappet cams live. It literally embeds itself in the cam lobe and creates a sacrificial layer between that flat rotating lifter and the flat tappet cam, and that's what protected those lobes. Well, the EPA said, well, why do you guys need that in the oil? And the manufacturers at that point had pretty much all gone to roller cams, and they're like, well, we don't really need it in the oil. So new EPA mandate removed the majority of the ZDDP from the oil. The result of that was the following years there was a lot of camshaft failures. In fact, tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of flat tappet cams went flat. It's the same story I've heard over and over and over and over the years, and it still happens occasionally because people aren't aware of this oil thing. So when they took that ZDDP content out of the oil, the on-the-shelf oil, the flat tappet cams lost all their protection. So guys building motors with a flat tappet cam, they didn't even get 3,000 or 4,000 miles out of their motor before the lobes were completely shredded off the cam and the whole engine was destroyed. This was a common thing. It doesn't have that happen that much anymore because a lot of people are aware of this. The thing is, if you're going to run a flat tappet cam nowadays, you have to run special high zinc oil. You got to run Driven, you got to run one of the performance oil manufacturers oil that is high and rich in ZDDP, designed specifically for flat tappet cams. Now that oil is actually not legal to use in cars with a catalytic converter, but I mean, who's going to know? So that's the deal with the flat tappet cams. The other thing is, when you first fire up a motor, an engine with a flat tappet cam, you got to rev the engine up to 2,000 RPMs for the first 20-30 minutes to get the break-in done, because the cam is splash lubricated from the crank, and during the break-in process for that flat tappet lifter and cam, they don't get enough oil at idle, and if you let it idle, you shred the lobes off the cam. With a roller, all those problems are eliminated. If we have a roller cam, it uses a roller lifter, and this is a Ford roller lifter out of our 5.0 here, one of the old ones. We're not going to reuse these, but I'm just showing it to you for demo purposes. The roller has 2/3 less rolling resistance or friction. That's a parasitic. 2/3 of the parasitic draw that the cam creates is eliminated. I don't have to use any kind of zinc additive in my oil. I can use regular oil off the shelf, and there's no break-in period. I just put these in, fire it up, let it idle, do my tuning, boom. The other thing is, the roller cam, you are capable of much more aggressive low profiles, and you're also capable of much heavier spring pressures, which helps the RPMs of the engine come up quicker, and it also dictates how fast the RPMs come up when you stomp on the throttle. These are a much better choice. So like I said, I've gotten to the point where if you want to do a flat tappet cam, don't even call me. We're not doing it. We're going to do rollers, right? Go roller or go home. That's my thing. Now, the retrofit roller kit for Charlie's 289 block that we got. And then of course on the early 289 we have the tie bar set up, and that's the roller lifters that the anti-rotator is the tie bar instead of that crow's foot. And those basically just go in there like that. So they come in pairs. Now they do make the spider assembly set up for the early engine, it's a retrofit kit. It's not the same lifter as the factory roller, but it is a spider assembly setup, and you have to drill 2 holes here and here before you put the cam bearings in. But it ends up being about the same price by the time you buy the crow's feet and the lifters and everything. So we just go with the tie bar setup on the early ones. It's about the same price, and it's easier to set up. You don't have to drill the holes and set that up and stuff. So, but you can do it either way. But just make sure you don't use the late model factory roller cam lifters in the early block, because they are not the same. They will not work. Out over there, and they are much cheaper, like half the price of a retrofit kit. So you can get into this with a roller. You got a roller ready block, and the way this comes, it has this spider assembly in the lifter valley here, much like a Vortex Chevy, but this has 2 bolts instead of 3. So from the factory, these roller lifters, they have, if you look at this roller lifter, it has a flat spot machined onto it right there. Now, over each set of lifters, you have what they call the dog bone bracket, and that just goes right over the lifter there. It sits on the lifters, and you got a pair of lifters in here. And as they sit in their bores, that dog bone just catches those flat spots. Now what this does is that holds the roller in line. The roller has to be held in line with the cam. This lifter cannot spin or turn, otherwise you get yourself in trouble. So, but from the factory, when you see these motors, and if you're looking for one of these in the boneyard, what you want to do is look in the lifter valley of the engine, and you'll see these dog bones in here on each set of lifters. Now I don't have a cam in this, so the lifters are kind of falling through there. But another thing you'll see this spider assembly bolted right in there like that. It's got a couple of bolts that hold it down to the lifter valley here. So if you look in the lifter valley, you pull the intake and you see this assembly with the dog bone on each one of them. This is what you're looking for. That is the roller cam setup from the factory, and that's what you want. If you find one like in an Explorer, they all had roller cams with a set of GT40 heads with a 3-bar or the 4-bar heads. You got yourself a gem there. Hopefully at the boneyard you can pick it up for a song, and you got yourself a really good builder as long as it rotates. So when we talk about the 5.0 roller block, that's what we're talking about. And also you'll see a retaining plate on the front, much like you have on the other one. It's a little different plate. It uses an extra oil hole down here. The earlier retaining plate does not have this extra provision here. And also you'll notice, if you see what it says bottom back. So this plate here is directional. What this extra little tang does here, and it has an oil groove in it, is that takes oil from an oil gallery hole, and this thing goes on just like that. And this gives extra oil to our thrust area here, because there's a little bit more stress on the thrust plate. The earlier plate you saw in the last video, it doesn't have this provision out here for that extra oiling, and it will actually go on either way on the earlier Ford. So that's another difference, is the plate is going to be different here. One nice thing is if you're doing a chiming chain cover, you can use the early cover on here. Now the later model cover for the 5.0 does not have a provision for a mechanical fuel pump. This is just blocked off here. But you can use the early cover on the late model block, and it bolts right on. The other thing the late model cover doesn't have is it doesn't have a dipstick hole. So if you're doing an early classic Mustang or something, you're going to want to use the early cover or a replacement cover that has the dipstick hole in it here and has a provision for your mechanical fuel pump, and it will bolt right on to the late model block. That's one nice thing about that. It takes the same timing chain and gear set with no problem, so everything else on the front is the same. The distributor mounting is the same. One thing that I want to point out here on the back of the engine, and that is the crankshaft in the later model block is different. Not only does it have a different external balance weight, but it is a one-piece rear main seal. Now the nice thing about the one-piece rear main seal is it's actually a better seal than the two-piece that they had on the earlier. So you're actually getting a good upgrade with the one-piece seal here. And you also got to make sure you put the right flex plate on it. The thing is, the early model flex plate will bolt on here, but you got to be careful with that because they have a different balance and it's weighted differently. You're going to want to get this balanced anyway, but do not put the early model flex plate on here. You got to have the later one with the heavier balance weight. The bell housing bolt pattern is exactly the same as the early one, so that's one nice thing about it. Now, the only other thing that is an issue here is if you're running a standard transmission, the earlier block has a provision here on the side of the block, and this is for the clutch linkage if you have a manual transmission in the car. So this is the early 289, and the 302 is the same way. And also the 351 had this. On the later model 5.0, that is not there. So the thing is, on the 5.0 block, on the later 5.0 block, you don't have that boss here for your clutch linkage. And so, but there are companies that make an aftermarket linkage that bolts on and takes the place of that. But just remember, your factory 4-speed linkage is not going to work with this block. You got to buy an adapter kit. Other than that, I mean, those are the main differences. It does have a different crankshaft, obviously, and a different balance, and I believe different connecting rods as well. But you're going to get all that balanced anyway. But it's basically a bolt-in deal. I have another video where I'm talking about how to get. They make a special conversion balancer that'll work on both engines. In other words, it has the weight. It's weighted correctly for the crank balance on the late 5.0, but it has the bolt hole provisions and so forth and the offset for all of the early 289, 302 pulley assemblies. So there is Professional Products makes that balancer, and it's really handy to buy that, and it's not that expensive. So if you're looking for a really good upgrade, look for a 5.0 roller motor. They're plentiful, they're all over the boneyards, they're cheap. And I know I'm getting messages even on the 289 build. There's always the guys that say, hey, you want more power out of a small block Ford, put an LS motor in it, you know. So listen, if you guys are posting, and a bunch of you have posted on these videos about these Fords, and you're saying, just put an LS in it. Come on, man, just stop that. This isn't an LS swap video. This isn't an LS upgrade video. It's for the guys that want to upgrade their 5.0, and there's plenty of them out there. You know, you want to put an LS in your Ford powered car, you go right ahead, but you're going to triple the price of what you're going to pay to do one of these. It's just way more expensive, and yes, they make power. I'm doing an LS1 video right now. For you guys that love the LS, watch the LS1 build, okay? You don't see Ford guys jumping on the LS build going, just put a Coyote in it, you know? You don't. I mean, come on, it's just nonsense. And like I said before, in my opinion, if you take an old classic Mustang and you put an LS motor in it, you just ruin the value of the car. I have nothing against LS motors. I've done a ton of swaps. I've built a ton of them, but this is a Ford video. And you know, watch the rivalries, guys. So the car companies want people to have rivalries. That's how they do marketing. I said this a long time ago in a video. If you are around people in the industry that build motors and work on cars and do performance stuff, if you get into a rivalry about brand, Ford, Chevy, Dodge, whatever, from my perspective, somebody who's doing all of these all the time, that is an amateur move. Those attitudes of Chevy sucks and Ford's the best, or Ford's garbage, Chevy rules the world, or Mopar or no car, you know. I look at that when I hear that from people, and in the back of my mind, I mean, I might not say anything to you, but in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking amateurs. That's the way us experienced guys view that, because I've got every make and model here, right, for GM. I got Chevy, I got Pontiac, I got Oldsmobile, we got Ford, we got a bunch of Chrysler stuff. They all have their advantages and disadvantages, and to be honest with you, I really like Ford engines. This small block Ford, regardless of what you think, if you're a Chevy guy, and this engine is legendary. It really is. It's cheap, and it has a ton of horsepower capability. It's a big bore, short stroke motor, and you can make crazy horsepower with this thing. So, you know, you can say whatever you want, but you're probably wrong. if that's what you're getting into, right? So keep that in mind. And also, if you post in my comments, I'm getting to the point where it's like, if you get on a Ford video or a Chevy video and you say, you know, part it out and put a Chevy in it, or LS swap it or whatever, you know what, I'm just going to delete your comment. I read those comments every day, and if that's your mentality, I don't have time for it. It's just pure nonsense is all it is. All right, so hopefully that gives you Ford guys some insight into what to be looking for. And like I said, I paid $120 for these, including the spider assembly, the dog bones, and a set of used lifters. I'm not going to reuse the lifters, but when I get time, I might do a teardown video on this and get a little more into it. Hopefully that helps. If you have any questions below, go ahead and ask, and I'll do my best to answer. I can't answer everything. I get literally 100 to 150 messages a day, plus a bunch of emails. So I hope this helps you, and I appreciate you watching, and we will get back on the 289 and the Pontiac and everything else soon, next day or two. Got the checking push rod supposed to be here today for that Pontiac, so we can set up the valve train. So hopefully we'll get that video done and make that customer happy. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you very soon, I promise. It was like $700 or $800 for the cam and the lifters. It is, and that's one of the reasons that a lot of people kind of shy away from going with a retrofit roller in an older block, because it's expensive. It used to be, you know, 5-6 years ago, it was $1,000. They've come down in price now, but still. And by the way, $700 is well worth the money, trust me. Now, the advantage to the factory roller is you can get a roller camshaft in this block. It's not a retrofit kit. It is a cam designed for engines originally equipped with a roller cam from the factory, i.e. the later Model 5.0.